Okay, so we have now journalized all our transactions. We did post to the accounts receivable and accounts payable subsidiary ledgers as necessary, but our general ledger is not yet posted to. I did get these ledgers together. I put in the names of all the accounts and the account numbers in there, so I'm ready to go. Posting is all about copying from the journal into the ledger. Okay, and so here I've got May the 1st. I have a debit to cash for $5,000. So I go to my general ledger, I find the cash account. I have May the 1st. You skip the item account, and we have a $5,000 debit. Running total balance is now $5,000 debit as well. Cash is an asset, so it's going to have a debit balance. Every number in this ledger should be a debit. Okay, where did this come from? We go to the post reference. Where did it come from? It came from General Journal, page 1. And our last step of posting is to go back to the General Journal and put in what account number did I post this to. I posted it to account 101. Okay, now capital on the 1st as well is a credit of $5,000. So I find my capital account. And so it now has a running total balance of $5,000 credit. And it came from GJ1. And that was account 303. Okay, I need rent expense on the 2nd for $200 debit. Here's rent expense. May the 2nd, $200 debit. So now there's a $200 debit. Running total balance. GJ1 is where it came from. And I go back to the journal and say this came from account 501. And I have cash credit for $200 on the 2nd. Cash on the 2nd. I don't put the month in again. Okay, and that was a credit of $200. Now my previous balance was a debit. This is a credit. Debit and debit is add. Credit and credit is add. But debit and credit is subtract. So this is a debit. This is a credit. So that would be subtract. 5,000 minus 200 is 4,800. But it's still a debit balance. Every single number that's in the running total should be in the debit side. Okay, where did this come from? GJ1. And that was account 101. We go down to equipment. We have equipment is a debit for $1,200 on the 5th. There's equipment. 5th, that was a debit of $1,200. The new balance is $1,200 debit. This came from GJ1. And we go here, and that was account 180. Now here we have this asterisk here, which shows that we did post this $1,200 credit to XYZ company already. but we still need to post it again to accounts payable in the general ledger. Okay, so accounts payable on the 5th needs a credit of $1,200. There's a credit of $1,200. That brings us a $1,200 credit balance. This came from GJ1. And that was account 202. Okay, so we're showing that we posted it twice. Once to 202 and once to XYZ in the subsidiary ledger. Okay, mowing supplies is $150 debit on the 8th. So that gives us a running total balance, also $150. Came from GJ page 1. That's account 130. Okay, now we have cash credit of $150 on the 8th. Okay, now our previous balance, $4,800, is a debit balance. This is a $150 credit. So again, we have to subtract. We got $4,800 minus $150 is $4,650. That's a debit balance, but it's now less of a balance than we had. Okay, that came from GJ1. Journal, and this got posted to account 101. Okay, here we have the Minion Mansion Apartments did get debited this $860 debit. That's why that asterisk is there, but we have yet to debit it to accounts receivable in the general ledger. So accounts receivable on the 10th needs an $860 debit. Accounts receivable. $860. So we have a balance of $860. Where did this come from? J1. That's account 120. Okay, so we've posted this now to both account 120 and also to Minion Mansion Apartments in the subsidiary ledger. Now we also have to post a mowing fees earned on the 10th, $860 credit. So that gives us a running total of $860 credit. And that came from GJ1, and that's account 401. Okay, telephone expense. Okay, needs to be debited $80 on the 15th. Here's telephone expense. Debit 80, that gives it a running total balance of 80 debit. GJ1, and that's account 502. And we have a credit to cash for 80 on the 15th. Okay, our previous balance was $46.50 debit. This is a credit for 80. I got to subtract. So that brings me down to $45.70. Still a debit balance though. And that's account 101. Okay, here I'm debiting cash on the 18th for $620. Debit $620. Okay, so now I have a debit balance of $45.70 plus a debit. So I'm going to add the $620. And I now have $51.90 in my running total balance. Okay, then we have a credit to mowing fees earned on the 18th of $620. Okay, now my previous balance was a credit, and this is a credit. Credit and credit is add. So now I'm going to take $860 and $620, add them. That my new running total balance then is $1480. And that's account 401. Okay, now here we have one where we posted it to XYZ, but not yet to accounts payable. That's a $100 debit on the 20th. Okay, previous balance was $1,200 credit. Now we have a debit. Debit and credit is subtract. $1,200 minus $100 is $1,100. Still a credit balance. Accounts payable is a liability, is a credit balance normally. Okay, and we have a credit to cash of $100. Previous balance was $51.90 debit. Now we have a credit, so we have to subtract. So that's now $50.90 debit. Okay, here we have debit to cash on the 25th of $70. Debit of $70. Okay, this is a debit and a debit, so we're going to add $50.90 and $70. That's $51.60. And we have accounts receivable credit of $70 on the 25th. Previous balance is $860 debit. This is a credit, so we have to subtract. That's account 120. Okay, we go to the drawing, a debit of $100 on the 31st. And that gives us a $100 debit balance.